Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Hello and welcome to another Star Wars Legends video. And today we'll be looking at one of my favorite characters in Star Wars, the Emperor himself, Sheev Palpatine. Or I guess this is Legends, so just Palpatine. And I mean, you can't help but love the guy. He's always having so much fun, and he's just purely, almost comically evil. However, the version of Palpatine that we've got in most of the expanded universe, and certainly the films, has sometimes been contradicted. In today's video, we'll look at two of these contradictions, which present Palpatine with different, albeit also disturbing and interesting backstories. The first of which radically alters the history of the character, and the second of which changes, I think, the character's personality. So let's start off with the easier one, and take a look at what is one of the first official pieces of Star Wars media, specifically the 1977 novelization of Star Wars A New Hope, or just Star Wars at that time. Specifically, the prologue for the novelization actually contains some universe building, which just isn't present in the movie. And wouldn't you know it, you actually have Palpatine name dropped and a brief history given for the character. The Old Republic was the Republic of Legend. Once, under the wise rule of the Senate and the protection of the Jedi Knights, the Republic throve and grew. But as often happens when wealth and power pass beyond the admirable and attain the awesome, then appear those evil ones who have the greed to match. So it was the Republic at its height, aided and abetted by the restless, power-hungry individuals within the government and the massive organs of commerce. The ambitious Senator Palpatine caused himself to be elected President of the Republic. He promised to reunite the disaffected among the people and to restore the remembered glory of the Republic. Once secure in office, he declared himself Emperor, shutting himself away from the populace. Soon, he was controlled by the very assistants and bootlickers he had appointed to high office, and the cries of the people for justice did not reach his ears. So, this backstory, which of course was almost immediately changed with Episode 5, which showed Palpatine as a powerful Force user, had the Emperor being manipulated by a dark group of individuals. I think if George had gone further down this route, he would have had them be something like the Sith, and to me it appears like basically the Palpatine we get here was basically combined with the dark individuals to have somebody who has dark aspirations and almost a separate persona which they use for gaining popular support. Interestingly, the title President of the Republic is used in many EU works before the prequels to refer to Palpatine, and of course the name would be used for the Emperor in the prequels themselves. The discussion was funny, I'm sure, for people who were really familiar with Star Wars lore when The Phantom Menace came out, and the casual fans were trying to figure out whether this new character Palpatine was actually the Emperor or not. Early scripts for The Empire Strikes Back would have adhered closer to this idea, and even by Return of the Jedi, the Emperor, who remember is unnamed in the OT, seems always to be surrounded by strange, mysterious, and dark individuals. I think the idea of an ambitious, but perhaps well-meaning senator being completely broken by the shadowy cabal, perhaps the Sith themselves, is almost as disturbing as what we get with the actual Palpatine. However, for obvious reasons, it has very little bearing on the character as we know and love him. However, let's move on and look at Dark Empire. Dark Empire is sort of the black sheep of the Star Wars EU. It was launched almost concurrently with Heir to the Empire. It is of course part of Star Wars Legends canon, but is almost totally ignored. It does get some passing reference, sometimes almost in a mocking way when it comes to Timothy Zahn and the Thrawn duology, but overall the EU chose instead to follow the plot, tone, and sort of style of the Thrawn trilogy rather than Dark Empire 1 and 2 and Empire's End. That leaves the comic series as a sort of what could have been for Star Wars Legends. Almost like a fever dream that, if squinted at, can sort of fit within the lore, but really doesn't. And one of the things that I talked about being different is tone. Dark Empire is, put simply, dark. The art style, I think, perfectly sets up how you should feel when reading the comic, and this different tone presented Palpatine as a different and, in my opinion, more disturbing character. Palpatine in the rest of Star Wars Legends is power hungry, but it's taken to a whole new level in Dark Empire. He wants to not only create the Empire and conquer the galaxy, but to conquer the entire universe, to dominate everything purely through the dark side of the Force. He is always becoming more powerful, always studying holocrons and producing new knowledge. And he becomes, at some points literally, almost a metaphysical entity within the Force itself. Less of a human or even an extraordinarily powerful Force user, but instead a demon. I mean, just hear the description of Biss from the end of Dark Empire 2. Throughout the world submissive to the Empire, Biss is renowned as a paradise, whose siren calls draw multitudes to willingly apply for immigration to its shores. Once there, wrapped in the power of the dark side, the immigrants become completely submissive, their life energy forever enslaved to the mind that would devour a galaxy. The Palpatine of Dark Empire is able to summon storms from across the galaxy, destroy fleets, break the fabric of space and time. And this is where we get into the disturbing part of his backstory. Palpatine's not only mastered the ability to survive after death, but has also died many times before. Now, this point in Dark Empire has been flatly ignored and denied even in subsequent canon. However, Palpatine reveals that he's been so affected by the dark side of the Force that his body cannot contain his power. So Dark Empire gives us a Palpatine which apparently has just been dying everywhere, and which is somehow even more into the Force. But there's more than just that. Palpatine in Dark Empire is known to rely on the psychological and controlling aspects of the Force even more so than Palpatine in the rest of canon. We already talked about Biss and an entire population under his sway, but we also have ships like the Eclipse, which just by being there exude incredible dark side powers. Luke partially falls under Palpatine's control. The Emperor has entire legions of Darksiders at his service. One of these, by the way, was Jiang Drogo, and I've been meaning to talk about Jiang for some time, so I'll just briefly touch on him here. This is from issue 5 of Star Wars Gamer magazine. Jiang Drogo was an Emperor's hand. He harbored a sincere love for the Emperor, and after the Emperor's death at Endor, fell into an insanity, butchering the crew of his ship, the Emperor's Shadow, through his extreme dark side powers. And it was actually Drogo's body which Palpatine first inhabited after his death at Endor. And when Palpatine was finally killed at the end of Operation Shadow Hand, Drogo's screams cut through the Force itself. Anyway, I just find these discussions about how characters change and how their backstories can be either adopted or left in the case of Dark Empire to be very interesting. My friend Corey Luces also did another video like this on the Clone Wars and how it was originally envisioned in early EU work before the prequels, and although it is better for continuity, it's almost a bit of a shame that we don't get to go through the same thing with new canon. Anyway, today's question of the day comes from DeWald, who asks, my question is, at the end of episode 9, what happened to the First Order? I mean, it's great that they won against the Final Order, but shouldn't the First Order still be out there trying to dominate the galaxy? And yes, presumably they are still out there trying to dominate the galaxy. However, I think the final scenes of episode 9 are meant to show the galaxy rising up and coming together against the First Order. We see Star Destroyers being blown up, but yeah, I think generally it's pretty messy. I think I've already talked about this in a hashtag #AskEck so I'm sorry if I'm repeating this for anyone, but this question has come up literally dozens of times in my comment section, so I wanted to address it. Whether we'll see the First Order or not in the future, I'm not sure. Maybe there'll be some sort of First Order remnant or just an Imperial remnant, I'm not sure, but I think Star Wars probably will not touch the post-episode 9 era for quite some time. Anyway, that's all I have for you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you've been enjoying my content lately. I've been streaming like 5 times a week, sometimes 5 or 6 hour streams over on my second channel, X2. It would mean a lot to me if you guys would go subscribe, just to support me, but only if you're interested in the content. Until then though guys, have a great one, and as always, may the Force be with you.